It's been a while since I've played Pokémon Black 2 and White 2, which are two of my favorite games in the entire franchise. So today, I'm attempting to complete a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Black 2 on challenge mode using only fighting types. On the screen, you can see my rule set. In addition to hardcore Nuzlocke rules, I have banned setup moves like Swords Dance and Calm Mind, and I will not be using the Showdown damage calculator, which is a very helpful tool for hardcore Nuzlockes, but I felt it might make things a little too easy in a vanilla game. Also, I didn't remove EVs from this game, but I never went out of my way to intentionally EV train, and I used rare candies, so the only EVs I got were from trainer battles. There are 13 fully evolved fighting type Pokemon in Black 2. Now, on the surface, 13 fighting types is definitely a pretty solid number. However, I don't play with legendaries or mythicals, which wipes out 4 of our options. And Toxicroak is limited to the postgame, bringing us to just 8 fighting type Pokemon that we have access to in order to complete the game. By the way, the reason I'm playing Black 2 as opposed to White 2 is because Heracross is a Black 2 exclusive, giving us 1 extra encounter, and a crucial one at that. This is my first Monotype Nuzlocke challenge, and it will definitely be a good test. Now, let's get into the run. Luckily, in Gen 5, Tepig evolves into a fighting type, so we choose Tepig as our starter and name him Chuck. However, Chuck himself isn't a fighting type yet, so I have to box him as soon as I catch our first fighting type of the run. At the ranch, we can do just that, catching a Riolu, who we named Blue Steel. After running around for a while to grind up Blue Steel's friendship, he finally evolves into a Lucario. Now we can take on Sharon, the first gym leader. A quick note, Lucario doesn't actually learn a fighting type attack until level 15, but the gym's level cap is 14. So I take advantage of the hardcore Nuzlocke rule set to get Lucario to the point where knocking out Sharon's first mon, Patrat, with a few quick attacks will have him level up to 15 and learn Force Palm. Lucario's steel typing for this battle pretty much makes this a free first gym badge, as we're never really in danger of taking too much damage from any of Charon's mons. After Patrat goes down, Lucario one-shots Lillipup with Force Palm, and then takes down Pidove with a couple more. An easy first gym badge. As we're leaving, we run into Bianca, who gives us the TM for return, which will be a fantastic move for Lucario since we've grinded him up to max friendship already. Also, with Roxy's level cap being level 19, we're able to evolve Chuck into a Pignite, making him usable for the rest of the run. With 2 mons now on our team, it's time to take on Roxy. Once again, Lucario's steel typing is a big advantage in this fight. Blue Steel quad resists all of Roxy's lead Koffing's moves besides Tackle, so we can easily take it out. Next up is Grimer. She disables Lucario's return after 1 turn, meaning our best option is to go for quick attacks, which knock out Grimer in just 2 turns since Roxy already used her super potion on Koffing. Lastly, Roxy brings in her ace, Whirlipede. I decide to let Chuck the Pignite get in on the action since Whirlipede is part bug type. However, after our second flame charge, Chuck gets poisoned by Whirlipede's poison point ability, and Venoshock takes us down to really low health. So I switch back to Lucario to finish the battle and secure us our second gym badge. Next up, we head to Castelia City. There, we get access to 2 more encounters. On Route 4, we catch a Scraggy, who we name Raphael. Unfortunately, he has a quiet nature, which is one of the worst natures we could get for a Scraggy, but on the bright side, he has the Moxie ability, which is fantastic. Then, we head through the Castelia sewers to catch a Timber in Relic Passage, who we name Angus. He evolves into a Girder at level 25, which is just under the level cap, so we do just that. Berg is the first real tricky fight of this run. His lead Dwebble is easily taken care of by Lucario, but his Carablast and Leavanny in particular pose some problems. Both of them have Aerial Ace, which is super effective against all our mons besides Lucario, whose steel typing makes it do neutral damage. Lucario does good damage to Carablast with Return, but takes a critical hit Aerial Ace in the process. Lucario eventually takes it out with a couple quick attacks. Next is Leavanny, who is a big concern. Lucario takes the first Aerial Ace, but Silk Scarf boosted Return does less than half, meaning the safest play is to switch out Lucario to play around the critical hit Aerial Ace. However, because Aerial Ace would do so much damage to my other mons, I decide to stay in and hope to avoid crit. In an incredible turn of events, Leavanny goes for Grass Whistle instead of Aerial Ace and misses. Return plus Citrus Berry recovery puts Leavanny in the yellow, and now, once again, I decide to risk crit. But Leavanny misses Grass Whistle again. Thank you, Berg, for relying on a 55 accuracy move at a time when Aerial Ace was by far the best play. Shelmet is Berg's final mon, and like so many other early game mons, it can't really touch Lucario. So Blue Steel stays in and delivers us the 3rd gym badge. So, through 3 gym battles, Lucario has taken out each and every one of the opposing Pokemon. In the battle versus Colress on Route 4, it's no different as Blue still easily wipes out his entire team. However, things were going to need to change if I wanted to beat the 4th gym leader, Elisa. Before taking her on though, we get access to our 5th encounter of the run, Heracross in Lost Lorn Forest, who I name Rhonda. It has a hasty nature, which is okay, and Guts, which can be a great ability if used correctly. Elisa poses a few main problems. The first is that her lead Emolga is part flying type and has Aerial Ace. It also outspeeds my entire team. My only answer against flying types is Lucario, so we should in theory be fine, but Emolga will likely go for Volt Switch, meaning Elisa will pretty much be switching into another Pokemon right away. In fact, all of Elisa's Pokemon have Volt Switch, meaning she can switch to Emolga at any time. Or she could switch to her Zebstrika, the other big concern on her team. Zebstrika has Flame Charge, which is super effective against Lucario and Heracross, probably my 2 best team members at this point. But let's see how this battle played out. I lead Lucario against Emolga. Expecting Volt Switch, I go for Dig in order to do good damage to whoever she brings in. Because Zebstrika has Flame Charge, and that's the only super effective move Elisa has against Lucario, that's who she switches to. Zebstrika is faster than Lucario, so Blue Steel takes no damage before doing good damage with Dig. I know Flame Charge is coming now, but because it's non-stab, I decide to risk it and leave Blue Steel in. As predicted, Flame Charge crit wouldn't have killed, so Lucario is able to comfortably take out Zebstrika. Flaffy is next. Not expecting it to deal a lot of damage to Lucario, I decide to leave him in and go for Dig. We do a lot of damage, but Flaffy's static ability paralyzes Lucario in the process. Expecting the heal up, I switch to Heracross to go for Dig. Rhonda almost one-shots, but not quite, and Flaffy uses Thunder Wave on the next turn. I know Elisa wants to Volt Switch into Emolga on the next turn, but I decide to stay in and go for Brick Break. If Rhonda still outspeeds Flaffy, then she'll take her out. Otherwise, she can maybe get some good chip on Emolga, who has little to no bulk to speak of. The second scenario is the one that plays out, and luckily Rhonda hits through Paralysis. I go back to my dedicated flying type counter Lucario to eat an Aerial Ace and then go for return on whoever Elisa Volt switches to. But Lucario gets fully paralyzed and can't attack the incoming Joltik. Here, I make a very risky play. For some reason, I decide to leave Lucario in to eat a Volt Switch and then use Return on the next Pokemon, who will probably be Emolga. My thinking here is that Return will probably take out Emolga, and since Lucario is already so low on health and it's paralyzed, it might be my one opportunity to take out Emolga with Lucario. Luckily for me, Volt Switch doesn't crit and Lucario hits Emolga through Paralysis with Return. But Emolga survives on 1 HP. This is bad to say the least. Not knowing whether Emolga will go for Volt Switch or Aerial Ace, I switch into Eviolite Scraggy, who's my best chance to eat either one of those attacks. Emolga Volt Switches to Flaffy, and Raphael knocks it out with a Feint Attack. Emolga comes back in and I realize my best chance to KO this thing is just to stay in with Scraggy and hope he can survive an Aerial Ace. But, for some reason, Emolga goes for Pursuit, which Scraggy quad resists, instead of Aerial Ace. Thank you, Elisa? Joltik is her final mon, and I send out Pignite to take care of it with a Flame Charge. I don't think I'll ever know why Elisa went for Pursuit instead of Aerial Ace against Scraggy, but I am so incredibly thankful. And the run continues. There aren't a ton of noteworthy things that happen between the 4th and 5th gyms, but Chuck does evolve into an Emboar. Also, I wanted to quickly note that yes, Girder can evolve into Conkeldurr at any time. However, I decided at this point that for the role Angus was going to play on my team for the rest of the run, not evolving him and having him hold an Eviolite was our best play, so he could be a great physical wall. Now, we've seen a lot of Lucario at this point, but because Clay is a ground-type gym leader, Lucario is a no-go for this fight. Similarly, Emboar being a fire-type will be stepping nowhere near the battlefield as long as things go our way. My plan is to play this fight as a 3 versus 4. Clay leads with Krokorok, whose dark typing gives my team a great type advantage. I decide to leave with Raphael to hit him with Brick Break. Unfortunately, it doesn't KO Krokorok before he gets a Sandstorm up. Clay then sends an Onix. Quick side note, I find it hilarious that of all the ground types in this game, the developers added an Onix to Clay's team in challenge mode. Although maybe that was the right decision, as Onix flinches Scraggy with Rock Slides over and over again, forcing me to switch to Girder rather than KOing with Raphael. Girder knocks Onix down to 1 HP with Sturdy, and then Onix decides to explode. This was really scary in the moment until I remembered that Onix's terrible base attack, and so Girder was totally fine. I figure Clay's next mon, Sandslash, can't one-shot Angus from here, so I decide to test my luck with an Ice Punch. It doesn't kill, and Sandslash gets off a Hone Claws in the process. I switch in Heracross on a Crush Claw, and then use Dig to knock out Sandslash while also getting 2 turns worth of leftovers recovery. Finally, Clay brings out his ace, Excadrill, but Heracross can easily OHKO with a Brick Break. 5 badges down, 3 to go. But the next gym leader will likely be our toughest gym battle of the entire game. Skyla, the Flying type master. Her team is incredibly scary. She has a Swoobat, Skarmory, Sigilyph, and Swanna. Basically, 4 of my 5 team members are susceptible to a one-shot at any moment from any of these mons. The exception? Lucario, since he's part Steel type and therefore takes neutral damage from both Flying and Psychic type attacks. By the way, Skyla having 2 Psychic Flying type Pokemon feels like overkill. I did everything in my power to prepare for this fight. There was a move tutor in Driftvale City who teaches the elemental punches, so I taught Thunder Punch to any of my mons who could learn it. I was also mentally preparing myself to sack one of my team members if needed in order to emerge from this fight victorious. Let's see how things played out. As I mentioned, Lucario is going to be the key for this battle because of his part Steel typing. I lead him off against Swoobat. Swoobat does about half with Psychic, and then Lucario hits her hard with a Thunder Punch, which doesn't kill but does paralyze. Skyla heals up, and Lucario is able to take out Swoobat with 2 more Thunder Punches since he now outspeeds. Next up is Swanna. It outspeeds my Lucario and could hit him hard with either Air Slash or Surf. Since I need Blue Steel at good health to take on Skarmory and Sigilyph, I decide to switch into Girder. Unfortunately, I came to the conclusion that the safest way to win this fight was to chip Swanna down and hope to not get crit. I was willing to sacrifice 2 of my Pokemon here if need be. Girder takes a Feather Dance as he switches in, lowering its attack by 2 stages. Air Slash doesn't crit or cause flinch, and I go for Rock Slide to chip down Swanna. Angus crits Swanna. He was not about to go down without a fight and ultimately saved himself in the process. And I respect him so much for it. Even with Swanna down, there is still a long way to go in this fight. Sigilyph comes in next, but I don't know what move it's going for since any move would likely knock out Angus at this point. I could sack, but after what just happened, I decide to try and win this battle deathless. I switch in Raphael, who was evolved into a Scrafty, on the Psychic, and then OHKO with Payback. Finally, Skyla sends out Skarmory, so I go back to Lucario on Aerial Ace. Thunder Punch does just under half, and Skarmory uses Agility, meaning she'll now outspeed all of my mons. We trade Aerial Aces and Thunder Punches once again, but we now find ourselves in quite the predicament. Lucario is dead to critical hit Aerial Ace, but all of my other Pokemon are definitely dead to crit Aerial Ace as well, and none of them will be able to get an attack off before dying. So I decide to risk crit on Lucario once again. And Blue Steel holds. What a legend. What a battle. 6 gym badges are now in our possession. Before reaching Opelucid City to take on the 7th gym, I catch Mienfoo on Route 14, who I name Noodles. She has a jolly nature, arguably the best for a Mienshao. But she unfortunately has the inner focus ability rather than Regenerator. That said, I probably prefer the superior nature to the superior ability in this case. After defeating Skyla, my confidence in my team and my strategies was at an all-time high, and I stormed into Opelucid City ready for battle. Drayden leads with a Druddigon. Eviolite Girder takes a Rock Slide and does good damage with Ice Punch. Then, Angus wins what was apparently a speed tie to knock out Druddigon with Ice Punch on turn 2. Altaria is next, which despite being a flying type doesn't have any flying type moves. That's good, but it does however have Fire Blast, meaning Lucario is no good as a counter. I decide to go with Scrafty instead. Altaria sets up Cotton Guard, raising his physical defense by 3 stages, so it takes a bit of time, but Raphael eventually takes down Altaria with Ice Punch. Next up is Flygon, who Scrafty kills with Moxie boosted Ice Punch. Finally, Drayden sends out his ace, Haxorus, who does good damage from now double Moxie boosted Ice Punch. On the next turn, however, Haxorus forces Scrafty out of the battle and switches in Heracross. I probably could have easily killed with Brick Break or Close Combat right here, but I decide to play extra cautiously and switch in Lucario, as he resists all of Haxorus' moves. Blue Steel eats a Dragon Dance boosted Shadow Claw and secures the victory with an Ice Punch. After dealing with some Team Plasma stuff in Ruleset, we head to Humalau City to take on Marlin, the 8th gym leader. Against his lead Wailord, I go Girder. Wailord gets the burn on Scald, so Thunder Punch no longer kills. On the heal up, I take the opportunity to get a free switch into Heracross, who goes on to knock out Wailord with a Mega Horn and Brick Break. Mantine is next, and this is why I didn't use Lucario against Wailord. Blue Steel can eat an Air Slash on the switch in, and then Oko with a 4 times effective Thunder Punch. Caracosta is next, and Lucario does good damage with Aura Sphere, proccing Caracosta's sturdy ability. Lucario then takes him out on the next turn. Last up is Jellicent, Marlin's ace. Scrafty has a great type matchup here, and so I take advantage, taking Jellicent out with a single critical hit crunch. And with that, we've obtained all 8 gym badges in Pokémon Black 2. Before we can take on the Elite Four, however, we have to deal with Team Plasma. Colress is up first, and he leads with Magneton. Emboar deals a good amount of damage with Flame Charge, but then gets paralyzed by a Thunder Wave. On the next turn, Magneton Volt switches into Magnezone, who Emboar puts in the red with another Flame Charge. Expecting the heal up, I take the opportunity to switch to Lucario. Magnezone's sturdy ability allows it to survive on 1 HP after an Aura Sphere, and responds by paralyzing Lucario with Thunder Wave. I try to quick attack through Paralysis in order to kill Magnezone, but Blue Steel gets fully paralyzed and takes big damage from Discharge. I decide to pivot to Raphael to eat a Discharge, get Leftovers Recovery, and then kill, but Magnezone actually outspeeds and does good damage with Flash Cannon before going down. Not at all the start I was hoping for in what I didn't plan on being an overly difficult battle. Klinklang comes in next and goes for Shift Gear before Scrafty puts them into the red with Brick Break. I decide to switch to Angus on what turns out to be a Giga Impact. Knowing Klinklang will have to recharge on the next turn, Girder can safely take them out with a Wake Up Slap. Behem is up next, and I pivot to Scrafty, who's immune to the incoming Psychic. Scrafty then outspeeds and puts Behem into red health with Crunch. Raphael then eats an Energy Ball and KOs on the next turn. Colress sends in Metang, his toughest mon for my team to deal with. After some pivoting around and chipping down with a Scrafty payback, I switch to Heracross on a Meteor Mash and knock out Metang with Mega Horn. Magneton is last up, and Heracross can outspeed and kill with Brick Break. That fight was way closer than it needed to be, and Colress is nothing compared to our next opponent, Getsis. This is one of the toughest fights in the entire game, so buckle up. He leads with Cofagrigus, who pretty much can't do anything to Scrafty besides use Toxic, so I give Raphael a Pecha Berry in anticipation of that. Then, he takes out Cofagrigus with Crunch. Seismitoad is next, who goes for Earthquake, allowing me to safely switch into Heracross. I do good damage with Brick Break, and then Seismitoad misses a Muddy Water. A Brick Break from Ronda then knocks out the Seismitoad. Getsis then sends in Electros, who has Acrobatics and no held item. So, I decide to counter with Lucario. But Electros also has Flamethrower, so I switch again, this time into Emboar. I get good chip off with Flame Charge, but then Electros kills Chuck with a critical hit Acrobatics. Our first death of the run. Honestly, it probably should have happened before now, especially with how often I found myself needing to dodge crits, but this hurts. Chuck was my starter, and he isn't going to make it to the Elite Four with us. Rest in peace, Chuck. However, losing to Getsis means the doom of the Unova region, so I can't give up now. With Electros down to just about half health, Lucario can come in and kill with Aura Sphere. Getsis' Drapion is next up. He has Earthquake, which means I need to switch. I go to my dedicated physical wall in Girder. He eats 2 Earthquakes and then gets a critical hit Hammer Arm to kill Drapion. My god, Angus is an absolute monster when it comes to getting critical hits. He has probably the 2 biggest crits of the entire run to this point. Getsis then sends out his big bad Hydreigon to avenge his Drapion. I only have 1 resistance for Hydreigon's Dragon Tail, so I switch to Lucario, eat the Dragon Tail, and then Oko with Aura Sphere. Toxicroak is his final Pokemon. As much as I love Toxicroak because of my Renegade Platinum Hardcore Nuzlocke, by the way, check that out if you haven't already, link will be in the description. As much as I love Toxicroak, I need to get over that love and knock him out to win the battle. I bring in Ronda on a Brick Break, do good damage with Aerial Ace, dodge Poison Jab crit, and then take out Toxicroak with another Aerial Ace to defeat Getsis and save Unova. Now, it's back to the road to becoming champion of the region. On Route 23, I catch a Sock, who I name Marshall. He will replace Chuck the Emboar on my Elite Four team. I defeat Hugh on Victory Road. For the record, I didn't show any of the Hugh fights because they were incredibly easy. And just like that, we have reached the Elite Four. I have a full team of 6, ready to fight. As I started to plan for the Elite Four, I quickly realized that pretty much every battle was going to be tricky. Well, except for Grimsley. We have too good of a type advantage against his dark types. Because of that, I decided to take him on first. Lucario begins by taking advantage of his inner focus ability to avoid flinching to Liepard's Fake Out, and then OHKOs her with Aura Sphere. Then, against the incoming Crocodile, I pivot to Heracross on Earthquake and take her out with a Mega Horn. Bisharp has Aerial Ace and terrible Special Bulk, meaning Lucario is the perfect counter. Blue Steel easily one-shots with Aura Sphere. Scrafty is next. Expecting Brick Break, I switch to Heracross to protect Lucario, but for some reason Scrafty goes for Rock Tomb. And misses. One Brick Break from Rhonda then takes Scrafty out. Wow. Grimsley's final mon is Absol. Seeing Rhonda just OHKO a Scrafty with Brick Break gave me all the confidence in the world that she could do the same to Absol with close combat. And just like that, we've taken down Grimsley. I decide to fight Marshall second, but make no mistake, he provides a couple big time challenges for my team. His fighting type focus renders Lucario and Scrafty pretty much useless with the exception of a couple niche cases, and I don't have anything that can hit his mon super effectively besides Heracross Aerial Ace and fighting type moves against his Lucario. I decide to build a strategy around Heracross, since she is my one mon that resists fighting type moves. Against Marshall's lead throw, she dodges a Rock Tomb and then takes him out with 3 Aerial Aces. Next up is Mienshao, and this is the one mon that Lucario will be a perfect counter for in this fight. Heracross is 4 times weak to flying type moves, so I'm expecting Mienshao to go for Bounce. I switch in Lucario, and Bounce misses on the way down, so Blue Steel does good damage with Aura Sphere. Then, I utilize one of my favorite strategies, High Jump Kick Cheese. That's right, it's back. As Mienshao goes for High Jump Kick, I use Detect, which causes Mienshao to take herself out from the damage she takes from missing High Jump Kick. Just so perfectly executed. Conkeldurr is next. It holds a Flame Orb and has the ability Guts, which doubles its attack when inflicted by a status condition. I pivot to Heracross on Hammer Arm and then go for Aerial Ace as Conkeldurr responds with a Stone Edge to knock Rhonda into red health. Realizing Aerial Ace probably won't kill, I switch to Girder on Conkeldurr's next move, which turns out to be Earthquake. Girder is holding an Eviolite, so he takes the attack pretty well. Then, because of that first Hammer Arm dropping Conkeldurr's speed, Aegis now actually outspeeds and can kill with Superpower. Marshall sends in his Lucario next, which actually has Psychic as one of its moves. Expecting that move, I switch to Scrafty, who's immune. Then, I decide my best course of action is to switch to Noodles the Mienshao, who can outspeed and likely one-shot with Drain Punch. All she has to do is dodge crit. Luckily, Lucario goes for Calm Mind as we switch in Noodles. Marshall's final mon is Sock, who has Retaliate, a move that gets its power doubled if a teammate got knocked out on the previous turn. However, Mienshao has Bounce, meaning I don't need to worry about taking a boosted Retaliate. It turns out this was a moot point since Sock just goes for Brick Break. Bounce brings Sock down to the red, and then I go for Drain Punch as Marshall uses a full restore. Drain Punch does just about half, but since it's not a guaranteed kill, I U-turn into my own Sock to eat the next Brick Break and then take out Marshall's Sock with close combat on the next turn. Half the Elite Four down. Caitlyn poses the opposite problem as Marshall. In that battle, Scrafty and Lucario's typing made them bad options for most of that fight. Against Caitlyn, they will be the 2 key team members, as they are the only ones who are not weak to Psychic-type moves. I lead with Scrafty and do good damage with Crunch against Caitlyn's lead Musharna. I gave Raphael a Chesto Berry in anticipation of Hypnosis, which pays off right away as Musharna hits with Hypnosis on turn 1. Scrafty can then knock out Musharna on the next turn with another Crunch. Reuniclus is up next, and Scrafty can take her out in one shot with a Moxie-boosted critical hit Crunch. Caitlyn's ace, Metagross, comes out next, and because it has Hammer Arm, I have no choice but to switch. I switch to Heracross on Hammer Arm, back to Scrafty on Zen Headbutt, and then to Girder on the next Hammer Arm. The reason for this pivoting was that I figured Angus could outspeed Metagross after 2 speed drops, but probably not after just 1. Now that he outspeeds, I can go for Dig, which does decent damage, but Metagross takes Angus out with a Zen Headbutt on the next turn. To be honest, I was hoping Dig might do a bit more damage, but more importantly, I was hoping that one non-crit Zen Headbutt wouldn't take out Angus. Unfortunately, I was wrong, and Angus's critical hit luck ran out. Rest in peace, Angus, and thank you for your key critical hits. I decide my best course of action after Angus goes down is to bring in Noodles to kill Metagross with Drain Punch. This brings in Sigilyph, who poses the same challenges that Skyless Sigilyph did, being a Psychic Flying type Mon. However, Mienshao can do good chip damage with U-Turn, and then I can bring in Lucario to take the impending Psychic. Blue Steel then kills with Ice Punch on the next turn. Finally, we have Gothitelle, who gets completely walled by Scrafty. She starts setting up Calm Minds, which on the surface are pretty scary, but the only attack she has that Scrafty doesn't resist is Thunderbolt, which wouldn't have even killed with a crit. Scrafty takes her out with one final crunch, and that leaves just one more member of the Elite Four. Chantal was going to be by far the hardest Elite Four fight, which is why I decided to fight her last. This way, my mons have leveled up at least once by this point and are a bit stronger for this fight. The toughest part about the Ghost type is that it's immune to Fighting type moves, meaning the only stab moves I have against Chantal are Bug type moves from Heracross, but Ghost types resist Bug type moves, Steel type moves from Lucario, but I didn't teach him any, and Dark type moves from Scrafty. But Scrafty will have a hard time getting those off against Chantal's Drifblim as well as her Golurk, who has Brick Break. My original plan against Golurk was Girder, but that's no longer an option. Oh, also, Chantal's ace, Chandelure, hits incredibly hard and is holding a Choice Scarf, meaning none of my mons will be able to outspeed it. And it will be pretty difficult to take advantage of it being locked into one move, because no matter how I planned for this fight, Chandelure pretty much always ended up going for Fire Blast, a move that I have no resistances for. So, can I overcome this challenge? Let's find out. Against the lead Kofagrigus, I decide to try something really interesting. Similar to Ghetsis Kofagrigus, she can't really do much damage to Scrafty, meaning she's going to try and status him with Will-O-Wisp. Predicting this, I actually switch in Heracross. Why? Well, Heracross's ability is Guts, meaning her attack gets doubled whenever she's inflicted by a major status condition. So her getting burned is actually a pretty good thing for the rest of this run. Then anticipating Psychic, I switch back to Scrafty. I then go for Crunch. Raphael avoids the next Will-O-Wisp and then takes out Kofagrigus with another Crunch. So far, so good. Golurk is next. As I mentioned earlier, it has Brick Break, so Scrafty is not a safe option against it. On Brick Break, I go to Heracross, who eats it and then does just over half with Aerial Ace. He then eats a Shadow Punch and survives on 7 HP after burn damage. While I could stay in with Heracross here and outspeed, I'm not convinced another Aerial Ace will definitely knock out the Golurk, and I don't want to lose Heracross if possible. So I send in Marshall the Sock. He survives an Earthquake and then knocks out Golurk with an Ice Punch. I doubt the critical hit mattered right there, but it was a great homage to Angus's legacy. As in the original plan for this fight, it was Angus who was going to be Ice Punching Golurk right there. Now, it's time to deal with Drifblim. After a lot of deliberation, I decided that the best play was to chip Drifblim with Ice Punch and say goodbye to Marshall. His time on the team was short, but we wouldn't have had any chance of defeating Chantal without him. Rest in peace, Marshall. In planning for the champion, I realized that I could win the fight without Scrafty, so I decided to do something incredibly risky here. I sent in Scrafty against Drifblim, hoping he can dodge a crit acrobatics and then take her out with a Crunch. But for some reason, Drifblim goes for Shadow Ball instead, and Scrafty's easily able to knock her out. We've seen opponents throw like that a couple times in this run, but I never would have expected that Chantal, an Elite Four member, would do such a thing. Against Chandelure, leaving Scrafty becomes my best play, as all he needs to do is dodge crit Fire Blast, and he can then probably OHKO with Moxie boosted Payback. And Raphael does just that to knock out one of the scariest mons in the entire Elite Four. Bandit is the only mon that stands between us and victory. As I mentioned earlier, I don't need Scrafty to defeat the champion, so I decide to dodge yet another crit and then Crunch to defeat Chantal. That was a crazy battle to say the least. I got so incredibly lucky at a few different points in the fight, but I didn't really have a ton of other options, especially after Girder went down against Caitlyn. But I can't dwell on this fight, because there is still one more trainer standing between us and becoming champion. Iris. One of my favorite champions in all of Pokemon. I love her team composition, and on challenge mode, each of her mons has a fantastic moveset and holds an item. This will be one tough battle. She leads with Hydreigon, one of the most powerful Pokemon in the game. However, Noodles the Mienshao is a perfect counter. She can chip on turn 1 with Fake Out, and then outspeed on turn 2 to kill with Drain Punch. Druddigon is next, going for Outrage, so I switched to Lucario. The reason I didn't U-turn into Lucario was because I didn't want Iris to heal Druddigon if it came to it. However, it does indeed end up coming to that after Lucario dodges 2 critical hits from Outrage. I didn't really have any other play besides trying to dodge those crits. Eventually, Blue Steel does take out Druddigon with an Ice Punch. Aggron is next, and it's probably Iris' easiest mon to deal with, as all it takes is one Aura Sphere to easily knock it out. Now, it's time for Haxorus, Iris' ace. She is Earthquake, so I switch into Heracross, and then trying to one-shot it, I go for Close Combat. But I completely forget that this thing has a Focus Sash, so Haxorus can survive on 1 HP and kill with Outrage on the next turn. Heracross was probably the second most important team member throughout the run, and I have no doubt that we wouldn't even be close to this point without her. It's a shame that she didn't quite make it to the end. Rest in peace, Rhonda the Heracross. With Haxorus locked into Outrage, Mienshao can come in and kill with Drain Punch. This brings Lapras out, who takes big damage from Drain Punch, and then puts Noodles to sleep with Sing. Luckily, Lapras can't hit any of my mons super effectively, so I bring in Lucario on Blizzard, but while Lapras could hit a Sing, she can't hit a Blizzard. An Aura Sphere on the next turn takes her out. Iris' final mon is Archeops. He has the ability to Fetus, which means that its attack and special attack are both halved whenever its HP falls below 50%. Because of this ability, I want to get him below 50% as quickly as possible. I detect on turn 1 for a bit more leftovers recovery, and then I go with Aura Sphere on the next turn to put Archeops below 50%. Archeops then misses Stone Edge, and that all but seals it. One more Aura Sphere from Lucario, and we have defeated Iris to officially become champion of the Unova region. This was a fun challenge. This was the first time I've ever done a mono-type Nuzlocke, and it was certainly no cakewalk. Part of this was definitely based on the game I played. Black 2 on challenge mode is probably the hardest vanilla games in Nuzlocke in the entire series. And limiting my Pokemon to just one type really had me strategizing for each boss fight and building my playstyle around the strengths and weaknesses of the fighting type as a whole. Blue Steel the Lucario was definitely the MVP of this run, as he carried us through the early game and so many fights throughout the entirety of the game. And the other Pokemon that were on the team, Heracross, Scrafty, Mienshao, Emboar, Girder, and Sock, they all came through when I needed them to. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future, and leave a comment down below. Feel free to talk about your thoughts on my run, your experiences with the Gen 5 sequels, your own mono-type Nuzlocks, or anything really. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.